Night after night, a neon sign glowed outside the narrow storefront wedged between a dry cleaner's and an abandoned bookstore. By day, the place called the Brewed Elixir served cappuccinos, pastries and lattes to passers-by. But when dusk fell, a different clientele slipped in. They did not come merely for caffeine. Behind the counter lay a hidden door leading to an alchemical lab. There, beakers shimmered with arcane fluids, funnels clattered atop brass stands, and shelves bowed under jars of rare roots and glowing minerals. This was the true heartbeat of the Brewed Elixir, an underground enterprise crafting potions with the power to make corporate dreams come true. At least, for a time. Alexander, the establishment's proprietor, was tall and lean, his every movement efficient and deliberate. At first glance, he looked like any trendy cafe owner, sporting a tidy apron and hands stained with coffee grounds. Yet closer inspection revealed centuries' worth of knowledge in his eyes. He had inherited the alchemical craft from his grandmother, who, before she passed, left him a single directive in her notebook of spells: blend the mundane with the extraordinary, and walk the tightrope between serving and corrupting. He had brought this craft to the city, deciding it was the perfect environment for ambitious hustlers desperate for magic's edge. On the surface, nothing seemed unusual about the Brewed Elixir's layout. Wooden chairs stood beside a few plush sofas, and the walls displayed local art. A faded chalkboard listed espresso options and whimsical sandwich names. But around 9 each evening, the casual patrons trickled out, replaced by a more discerning crowd, arriving in sleek cars or stepping from private sedans. Some wore sharp suits, others clutched designer briefcases. They converged upon the unassuming counter, whispering phrases like night owl or golden tongue, code words, designating the specialized potions Alexander concocted in the back room. One chilly autumn evening, the brass bell above the door jingled to admit Eloise St. Clair, an executive whose presence generated murmurs amongst the regulars. Clad in a tailored navy suit, she exuded composure and success. Alexander greeted her from behind the espresso machine, and she walked straight up to the counter, leaning in to request a night owl. She offered neither small talk nor pleasantries. She simply needed to stay awake for 72 hours to close a massive merger. Corporate deals did not wait for human limitations. Alexander led her quietly through the hidden door, promising a discreet transaction. The lab was a study in organized chaos. Racks of vials lined the walls. Star-shaped glass flasks glinted under pearly orbs of magical light. Arcanic symbols adorned the countertop, scrawled in chalk to guide the energies of each potion. Eloise hardly blinked at the unusual equipment. She watched Alexander measure out silver-flecked powders, saffron threads, and an iridescent liquid from a small crystal vial. A gentle purple steam rose from the brew, filling the air with an aroma that blended equal parts coffee roast and ancient incense. Alexander poured the final product into a slender glass tube. "Drink half now, half tomorrow," he instructed. "Breaching your natural limits is risky business." Eloise accepted it, hidden ambition swirling behind her eyes, and left with a brusque nod. Moments later, another client arrived. Vince, a corporate lawyer sporting heavy bags under his eyes. He'd come for a mind sharp, a brew that heightened cognitive function and enhanced memory. In the hush of the back room, Vince confessed he was readying for a trial that could either make or break his firm. One slip in evidence or a misquoted detail would exact a dire price. Alexander had seen this desperation many times. He measured the potion's ingredients carefully. No single grain of crystallized rose essence could be misplaced, or the effect would backfire into mental fog. Vince stared at the process with trembling focus, as though the brew in Alexander's hands was his last lifeline. As these nightly consultations multiplied, so did the cafe's bottom line. Wealthy clients poured in, their whispered orders fueling Alexander's plans to expand. Yet with each new sale, rumors spread throughout the city's hidden magical networks. Ancient fae rumoured to dwell in private clubs, witches in rooftop covens, and conjurers in secret societies began to mutter that the brewed elixir was commodifying arcane power for profit. Alexander tried to steer clear of turf wars, forging alliances where possible but remaining cautious. He understood the precariousness of his venture and kept its most dangerous secrets locked away in the battered grimoire inherited from his grandmother. Late one evening, a stranger in a black trench coat arrived just before closing. He gave his name as Roderick and spoke too quietly for casual eavesdropping. In clipped tones, he explained that certain parties in the city's underbelly were taking interest in Alexander's unique services. He insinuated that they desired something beyond the usual ephemeral boosts, something capable of warping reality. Intrigued yet wary, Alexander led him into the lab. Hidden among the flasks and powdered crystals, they negotiated, the murmur of their conversation punctuated only by the hum of an arcane flame under a glass cauldron. Roderick's request was for a legendary elixir known colloquially as dreams to reality, rumoured to transform a person's imagination into tangible illusion. Alexander's grandmother had once warned that bridging dream and reality invited chaos. The pages about this formula were only half finished in her grimoire, scrawled with dire cautions. Yet Roderick's employers offered an astronomical sum that would secure the brewed elixir's place at the nexus of corporate power. Determined but conflicted, Alexander asked for time to consider, and Roderick left behind an envelope stuffed with a retainer as large as a lifetime's earnings. Over the next 2 days, the usual string of clients kept Alexander busy. Eloise returned looking frayed from overscheduling. Donovan, an investment banker who specialized in pairing fortunes with overseas conglomerates, asked for the golden tongue to seal a record-setting deal. Each transaction was another chunk of profit, another rung up the ladder of influence. Yet Alexander's mind stayed fixed on the proposed elixir that toyed with reality itself. Nights grew restless, haunted by the memory of his grandmother's voice echoing through the pages of the grimoire. Some doors, once opened, cannot be closed. When Roderick reappeared, his intentions were plain. Finalize the arrangement and produce a test vial of this reality-bending potion. Alexander's stomach twisted as he laid out the components. Black lotus petals, a measure of phoenix essence, an infusion of etheric essence substances rarely found outside the oldest texts. He placed them around a glass basin formed from quartz, inscribed with sigils representing boundaries between worlds. As he chanted the incantation, runes glowed across the lab's countertops, bathing the room in ghostly silver light. Roderick watched, a flicker of triumph on his face. With the final stir, a wave of luminescent mist rose from the basin, coalescing into a swirling orb that pulsed with otherworldly promise. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once, reflecting fleeting shapes that might have been nightmares or daydreams. Alexander guided the orb into a crystal vial, its power humming like a contained storm. Roderick's eyes gleamed as he snatched the vial, praising the alchemist's skill. As he departed, Alexander felt an unshakable dread. The line between illusions and reality was now blurred, and his cafe could become ground zero for unimaginable corporate manipulation. Days unfurled with tense regularity as board members and law partners continued to arrive for their potions. Vince, who'd used Mindsharp too often, admitted to migraines and occasional memory lapses. Eloise looked gaunt despite her success, whispering that she had begun seeing phantom shadows from overuse of Night Owl. Donovan had become so adept at telling convincing partial truths that he found himself lying even to loved ones. The illusions they purchased were exacting a toll on their health and relationships. Each new confession weighed on Alexander. He realized that potions were not an ultimate fix. They merely transferred the cost to another aspect of life. Determined to prevent true catastrophe, Alexander decided to scale down. He briefed his trusted staff and prepared to eliminate the most extreme recipes. He would keep mild elixirs small, controlled spells to help people focus, relax, or gain a modest boost. But dreams to reality had to be locked away. The retainer from Roderick's employers remained untouched, in a safe, a chilling reminder of what line he'd almost crossed. Some of his corporate customers grumbled about the new restrictions, yet others quietly thanked him for sparing them from deeper addictions. The calm didn't last. One night, Roderick stormed in, flanked by two tall, hooded figures who emanated a menacing aura. "You can't just refuse us," Roderick hissed, pulling Alexander close by his apron strings. Alexander stepped back, face grim. He argued that such power threatened to unravel lives, sabotaging mental stability and forging illusions that could disrupt entire economies. Roderick sneered, brandishing the small vial of dreams to reality like a weapon. Tension thickened as the hooded enforcers raised their hands, silent incantations twisting the air into greenish sparks. Alexander's staff emerged from behind the bar, each armed with protective wards. The confrontation escalated into a standoff of swirling magic and moral resolve. A storm of energies collided beneath the cafe's modest lighting. Alexander chanted a counter spell, causing steam to erupt from the espresso machines. While scalding white clouds filled the air, Roderick took advantage of the confusion. He hurled the shimmering contents of the precious vial at Alexander. Dread clenched Alexander's heart as he raised a protective barrier. The liquid struck the barrier with a flash, exploding into a kaleidoscope of illusions. Monstrous corporate beasts, haunted boardrooms, and specters of wealth that danced across the walls. For several terrifying seconds, the entire cafe glowed with impossible scenes as reality warped at the edges. Alexander gathered every bit of his arcane knowledge, channeling the protective sigils inscribed on the walls. By sheer will, he imploded the illusions back into the void they had sprung from, effectively sealing the rift. Chairs toppled, glassware shattered, and the neon sign outside flickered ominously. When the steam and illusions cleared, Roderick and his cohorts were gone. All that remained was a shattered cafe and the lingering sense that this had been a warning shot. If the city's power brokers truly wanted unstoppable illusions, they would keep coming. Exhausted, Alexander sank to his knees, shards of broken glass crunching underfoot. His staff crouched around him, relief and shock swirling in their eyes. The potion business had ventured too far into darkness, and it was time to close that gateway. The next morning, after clearing away signs of the magical skirmish, they agreed on the path forward. The brewed elixir would stay open as a coffee shop, but the powerful potions were done for good. Alexander planned to destroy any notes in his grandmother's grimoire related to dreams to reality. The knowledge would remain hidden in his mind, guarded with fierce resolve. Business changed over the following weeks. Corporate sharks still wandered in, but found only well-crafted espresso drinks and modest, harmless elixirs that offered no more than a slight perk above what a strong coffee could do. Many drifted elsewhere, presumably to black market dealers in search of more potent magic. Meanwhile, new regulars, students, artists, and neighborhood locals discovered the cafe's rich aroma, quirky decor, and genuine welcome. Alexander realized that authenticity, unadorned by illusions, carried its own simple magic. Gradually, peace returned. Eloise sometimes arrived without asking for potions. She would sip a latte and talk about the cost of her sleepless success. Vince turned up less frequently, admitting he was learning to trust his own wits again. Donovan ventured in, bearing the weight of his overextended deals, glumly realizing that ill-gotten golden words had fractured his personal life. They all came in one way or another, seeking real solace instead of illusions. Alexander listened, offering a sympathetic ear and a safe table in the back. It astonished him how human connections sometimes mended where magic had only patched. Still, shadows lingered. Roderick's threat was unforgotten, and the coffee shop's staff remained vigilant. They installed subtle wards around the premises, ensuring a repeat ambush would not catch them unprepared. At night, Alexander sometimes woke from haunted dreams, recalling the swirling illusions that had nearly overrun the cafe. For the first time, he felt he understood his grandmother's instructions. magic was a responsibility that could uplift or destroy, depending on how it was channeled. Each brew demanded not just skill, but wisdom. Yet a newfound rhythm emerged, mornings filled with the hum of grinders, afternoons punctuated by friendly chatter, and evenings spent concocting only gentle potion. Alexander, once solely focused on profit, discovered that by restraining the darker edges of alchemy, he had gained an unburdened soul. The staff echoed his sentiment, relieved to work in a place that felt like a haven rather than a clandestine dealer of illusions. By closing the door to unstoppable ambitions, they had opened another to genuine human warmth. Every so often, an old corporate client would prod Alexander about hush-hush special requests. He'd politely decline, suggesting they might find truly formidable power in themselves rather than any potion, and if they pressed, he'd give them a free coffee and kindly show them out, ensuring the intangible barrier of wards held steady along the walls. The neon sign, still proclaiming the brewed elixir, glowed with serene normalcy, but hinted subtly at stories behind its facade. If any passers-by wondered why the cafe had such an oddly enchanting vibe, the staff just smiled, saying they merely took extra care in every brew. So it was that the brewed elixir survived its brush with the tremendous hazards of unbridled magic. The corporate modifications, the illusions run amok, the collision with underworld enforcers, they all became part of an unspoken legend whispered among those who once tasted arcane power. Some swore the cappuccino still carried faint echoes of enchantment, enough to sharpen a meeting pitch or quiet a raging mind. Yet no one ever again saw potions that could topple entire skyscrapers or blend fantasies into reality. Alexander had chosen to protect that line, preserving the delicate balance his grandmother had taught him to value. Long after the last high-stakes executive drifted away, the brewed elixir stood as a place of genuine comfort in the buzzing metropolis. Baristas greeted each patron with a heartfelt smile, offering consistent warmth in an often cold corporate world. Soft lights and the smell of roasting beans replaced the once electric tension of clandestine deals. And each night, before locking the front door, Alexander would pause in the dim glow of the neon sign. He would run a hand over the hidden latch that led to the back room, ensuring everything was secure. Above all, he respected the boundary between earnest aspiration and lethal ambition. Whenever memory tugged at him, he'd picture that swirling orb of illusions nearly unleashed upon the world. He'd close his eyes and exhale, thankful the city remained intact, its sidewalks, high-rises, and inhabitants still anchored in solid reality. Perhaps one day society might be ready for such a potent force, willing to use it with wisdom and caution. For now, Alexander was content to serve lovingly brewed coffee and the gentlest of magical infusions. It was enough to brighten lives without breaking them, to satisfy yearnings without fueling destructive greed. In the quiet that followed closing time, he found peace, and that was worth more than any profit he could have imagined.